Glue dipping is such a massive subject when it comes to rushing volume, and it is so important that we get this spot on so that we get great retention as well as great looking fans with a seamless bond. Now, whether you choose to work off a jade stone or off a glue ring is completely up to you, and I now favour a jade stone. I do tend to change my techniques slightly, and I always experiment with different techniques because I think it's important when I teach students that I can adapt my teaching style to suit them. So I can work with both a ring or a stone, and for the purpose of this I'm going to be working with a stone because it makes it so much easier for you guys to see what I'm doing. And whatever you choose to work with, I recommend that you always put your glue on a piece of micropore tape or paper tape because it holds it in a dome. So whether you're using even if you're using a glue ring, put a bit of tape across it. So put some foil in it to keep it clean, put tape across it and put your glue on the tape because it will hold it in a ball. And we want a ball of adhesive because the most important part of the adhesive that we want to make sure the area that we're going into is this bit right on the top. This top of the dome is where the glue stays the wettest. You need to avoid the sides and the bottom of your glue. So we always go into the top here. I don't ever scoop out of the side of my glue because I can run the risk of dragging it onto cured glue, which is around the side here. And this glue will last me about 20 minutes before I get myself a brand new blob over here. The minute this glue starts to go off and starts to cure, it will render useless and it will start destroying the bases of your fans. So very, very important when it comes to adhesive that you work only in the top, which is where it's the freshest. Get yourself a nice blob like this so you can see the sort of comparison of the size compared to my tweezers. It's a good old blob that we've got going on there. The bigger the blob, the longer it will last. I could get 40 minutes out of this blob of glue. I could get 20 minutes out of it. You will know when it's going off, but the minute it starts to go stringy, get a new one. When you go to create your fan, the more precise your fan is when it comes off the strip, the less work you have to do. This fan has got a lovely pointy base, which means that I can go in slowly, 1 millimetre, and come slowly out. Look at that lovely amount of glue that we've got going on there. That is perfect so that we can place that straight onto the natural lash. I only ever dip my fan once if I can help it. Sometimes I might have to go in twice just to rectify it. 3 times I try not to. So if I'm dipping 3 times, I'm probably going to get rid of that fan and start again. I'm going to use this fan that I've just worked with to demonstrate the following rather than grab a new one because I want to show you what happens if you don't go in and out slowly. So the correct thing to do is go in 1 millimetre and come out slowly. The slow drag out will draw your base together in a lovely point like we've got there, and also it removes excess adhesive. If you go in and come out quickly, I've now got myself a big blob and I would actually have to dab that off somewhere. I'm going to dab it off out of place or out of view. And now I've got glue underneath there, which I've dabbed. I've started the cure of the glue. If I then went to place that on the client, I'm going to have glue that started curing and it's going to affect retention. So this is why we always go in and out slowly, because if we scoop like so, we grab ourselves excess glue. Excess glue will wick up the shaft or up the fan. It will take forever for that fan to cure and it's going to be unsightly. Now this fan is separated ever so slightly, so I'm going to try going in and seeing whether a slow drag on its own will bring the base together. It didn't. So this would be the situation where I would go in and ever so gently, did you see that too much there. I released the tension of my tweezers ever so slightly, which caused the base to come together. But I did release too much, and the one on the right hand side here has come in on himself and doesn't look pretty. But the basic principle of that was really, really good. And I'm going to show you from the side what we would do. So I would have my tweezers, and I want you to look at up here, look at this area up here. I would come in with my lash in the glue, and as I'm just coming out, I would unsqueeze, squeeze. So I'll do it again. I would be in my glue. As I'm coming out, I would unsqueeze, squeeze. So you can see this area starts to have a little bit more daylight in it, and I'm doing it quickly now, but the tips do not come open. It is just a release of grip. It is not opening the tweezers. If you open the tweezers, the fan will fall out or it will fall in your glue. That glue will remove it. So you'll be going in with your fan. If you need the bases to come together, it goes unsqueeze, squeeze. Watch my hand. Unsqueeze, squeeze. Let me turn my tweezers. Unsqueeze, squeeze. It is the tiniest movement that is almost invisible that actually you shouldn't be able to see it done. So when I teach my students in person, they can't see what I've done, and it's really difficult to learn how to do this. It actually took me 8 months to perfect this technique. So the base is open a little bit. I'm going to go in. As I come out, unsqueeze, squeeze, and there you go. My base has come together. A great way to teach yourself to do this without adhesive is to use some cuticle oil, and I'm just going to put my finger in shot here. Put some cuticle oil on the back of your finger here, and then you can drag your lash through your cuticle oil as many times as you want, practicing that tweezer tension, release and unrelease. That was too much, so it would be unsqueeze, squeeze, unsqueeze, squeeze. The tips don't come open, but that bit does. Obviously, if you've dipped it in the cuticle oil, you'd never put it on a client, but it's an exercise that you need to practice away from the client so that you can teach yourself to do it. And actually in some of my classes I do teach that if we've got enough time in the day or if people are really struggling, because once you've gone in the glue, you have no choice. That one is a perfect fan, so we have the ability to go straight in and come out slowly, and it's done the work for us. Do not go backwards. I see people that turn their lash like this and go backwards through the glue. Now what I've done is I've put too much adhesive on my lash because it's made contact with the back of it. Can you see, look how I'm in my glue? If you come in like this that I've been teaching you, you can see that I physically can only touch the tip of it. I can't make contact with the whole back of it. So by coming in at this nice vertical, you can see how much glue I've got going on now, at this nice vertical angle, just a tiny bit, and drawing back up is the perfect amount. Now with this fan, I've got one that's out on the right hand side, and this might work and it might not, but I would always give it a go and see. And I want this lash to come in and touch this one. So I've got to think of this glue as being a static object. Imagine it being the equivalent to my finger, which means that I would have to go in it that way. If this side was popped out, I would have to go in my glue that way. Oh, I've popped all of them out now. Let me see if I can push it back. There we go. So I'm going to go through slowly, release the tension in my tweezers, and there you go. My base came together because as I pushed my fan onto the glue, I released the tension, it acted like a finger and pushed it all together, and there you go. I got some glue on there, nice amount of glue, and my fan came together nicely. So if you get a fan like that, have a play with it because you can always rectify it, possibly. I'm not saying it's going to happen every single time, but it can sometimes work. I've now got it on the left side, sorry, on the right side. Let me do it this way, left to right, release the tension. And so I did an unsqueeze, squeeze, and it came together nicely. It might be that I would have to go back in the glue and just do another squeeze, or unsqueeze, squeeze, to get it to come together nicely, but that would be a maximum of 2. I wouldn't want to do any more than that. Obviously, the more perfect your fan is on picking it up off the strip, and that's what I want you to strive for, the less work that you have to do. So the more tweaks that you have to do to your fans later on, the harder your job becomes. So this one, I think I can go in and come out slowly. I just released the tension slightly and my fan came together really nicely. So it's well worth you making sure that you do perfect the pickup of your lashes off the strip so that your bases come together really lovely, so that you have very little work to do. I class myself as a lazy lasher, and what I mean by that is not that I'm lazy and I don't work hard, but that I want an easy life. So anything that I can do that means that I haven't got to faff around doing adjustments, I will do it. I like the tweezers to work for me. I like the glue to work nicely for me. I like to have a little bit of work only a tiny bit to do there, so that my fan is absolutely lovely. So you can see there's so many little technical steps that go into creating a volume fan, and a lot of it is the glue dipping. I do recommend that you perfect the tweezer tension if you can, because it's what gets your bases to come together in that lovely point, is by just allowing them to shift ever so slightly. So let's do this little 5D one. In, release, see how that moves. Look how lovely and pointy that little base is there. He's gorgeous, and that's what we want when we place it onto a natural lash. Minimal amount of glue, placed onto the client, lovely seamless bit at the bottom, no chunkiness going on. Obviously, the bigger your fan, the more of a base you're going to get on it because it's more product there, but it should be nice and seamless and still bond nicely to the natural lash. One thing about glue dipping that I do want to talk to you about, though, very briefly, is that never be frightened to use a little bit more glue if need be. So I have a client called Cheryl, and she is very, very oily, and as such I need to use a little bit more glue on her. So I would probably run the adhesive up to about there on her. So although technically this is not competition work and it's not technically correct, if I use the right amount of adhesive on Cheryl, the competition amount, her lashes do not stay on because of the oils in her skin. She's just a very naturally oily person. So on a client that is a little bit oily, use a little bit more adhesive, but it shouldn't be so much that it starts to overload the fan, or that it's going to start damaging the natural lashes or looking unsightly. So although there's quite a lot of adhesive up there, probably more than I would actually use on Cheryl, that's not that unsightly, and it's not going to overload the natural lashes. If it had travelled all the way up here, it would, but at the moment you can see that it's still pretty seamless, and if I was to put that onto a natural lash, and I'm just going to change the angles, it would still be okay. You might find that in times of high humidity within your country that you live in, so in the UK we sort of get towards April and our humidity goes up to, like, you know, at the moment it's like 77 in my salon. I know that people are going out into high humidity, so for that period of time I'm probably going to use a little bit more glue on my clients to counteract the humidity that they're going into when they leave my salon. Yet in the winter, when our humidity drops to about 35%, I can then use a little bit more adhesive on there. So it is a case that sometimes if you're struggling with retention, make sure that you could possibly use a little bit more glue on them, and it could be the solution to the problem that you've got. But we want to be going for a nice and minimal amount to start off with. That's what I'm going to be looking for in your case studies, is minimal amount of adhesive, nice clean work, because a lot of the time there is too much adhesive being used. Working on the release of tension, which I did there, which brings my bases together nicely, and a nice perfect amount of glue that we've got there. So this is what I want to be seeing from your case studies, but not to say that in the future, if you need to use a little bit more on some of your clients, you can do. So go away, practice that, perfect it, and just, you know, if you need to use the cuticle oil to help you learn how to get your bases to come together.